All right, we should be live for our 11 o'clock Q&A session. So I am excited to be here with you. My name is Heather Robertson. I am the host of the Half Size Me podcast. I am going live right now on YouTube and I'm going live on Facebook, and I'm here to help you. That's right. So what we are focusing on today is last week I got on live with you and we recorded a webinar which became a bonus podcast episode which went out this week. If you are listening to the Half Size Me podcast, it should have popped up in your feed. I think it was yesterday, Wednesday. So I want to encourage you to definitely download that and listen to it. But today's webinar is for you. It is for me to answer your questions, to help you as much as I can with the self-quarantining, maybe managing working and educating at home for 5 years now. I have been, since my kids were born, I've been homeschooling them, and then we built Half Size Me on the side. So I've been working and homeschooling now for a while, right? 2012 is when Half Size Me rolled out officially. And then my husband came home 5 years ago. So it's been him and I and the 3 kids all together doing the schooling, the working, all of it from under our home roof. Now, I will say that's probably the most where we've been impacted by this whole situation is we're used to not being at home. We're used to going to libraries and to bookstores and to public parks, and we change it up that way. So for us, that's probably been the most difficult part of this is literally being at home, homeschooling and home running our business. So we're feeling a lot of that discomfort that you are feeling in that regard. But as far as systems go, as far as like day-to-day functionings and how do you do that, I'm really experienced in that area and I would love to offer some help. So I have been here sharing this idea of structuring time in, of how to work on not eating randomly through the day, how to balance educating your kids and working from home, scheduling, things of that nature. And I want to address your questions as best I can today. So we've had a few questions that were already submitted, and I'll go ahead and share one of those. This one is from Sunny. She says, I can't listen from work, but please discuss how to talk to yourself when you are so stressed out and just want to eat everything, including your pet's food, just to be busying your mind with anything but the crisis going on. I want to give up and just sit in my kitchen and eat myself into a coma, but this has added weight and added to my depression and anxiety. Thank you. Yeah, this is where I'm going to be vastly different from some other people who might be saying, eat, cope with it how you need to with food, things of that nature. I'm going to tell you, think of your future self. At some point, this will end. All things come to an end. The question is, where do you want to be when this ends? Do you want to be 10, 20 pounds up from where we were when this whole thing started? Or do you want to be maintaining your weight through this process? Because there's a future version of you who is going to have to deal with all of that. So you treating yourself right now with a lot of respect and giving yourself the proper care you need is going to ensure your future self is in a much better place. The you from 2 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, whatever the issue is, okay? So when you're wanting to eat yourself into a coma due to anxiety, what that sends up red flags for me is, why are we feeling so much anxiety? Is it because of what we're taking in? So for example, I don't take the news in directly. I just don't. My husband's much better about that than I am. So I let him watch the news and give me the Reader's Digest version later in the day. I choose to abstain from listening to the news because on the day-to-day, there's really nothing that I can do about the current situation. So my first recommendation for somebody who's feeling this level of anxiety and stress is really create a tight schedule for yourself where you are limiting the amount of information you're taking in. If you're one of the essential people that has to go to work and you're working with other people, tell them that you want to opt out of those conversations. That, if they start talking about it, you say, hey guys, look, I totally respect that you want to have this discussion. I'm going to leave because I just really can't handle it right now. You opt out of it. The reason is your mind is your most powerful resource, period. Everything you think, everything you feel that comes from your thoughts causes action. So you can either be choosing to focus on the positive, to be focusing on what you can control, what you have the ability to have persuasion over, or you can focus on all the stuff that just sounds really scary and upsetting that you have no control over. And then you feel completely stressed out because you're just sitting there kind of mentally spinning your wheels. There's nothing for you to do other than quarantine yourself at home, right? So we want to focus on your actions, your thoughts, your perspective. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is I give yourself a time out. Everyone hear me on this. You walk in the kitchen, you want to eat yourself into a coma. You say, you know what? 10 minutes, 5 minutes. I don't care how much time it is. You set it on your timer. You walk back out and you can't come back in the kitchen until the timer goes off. The reason we need to do this is what you have to realize is impulsive decisions are never helpful, period. Impulse purchases, impulse eating, never helpful. What we all need in that moment is a pause. So I feel anxiety. I feel stress. I just heard this terrible thing on the news. I want to feel different. So what do? I walk in my kitchen. Donuts. Whatever. And you want to eat. What you really need in that moment is a pause. So you set your timer for 10 minutes, go for a walk around your block, maybe go down and walk in place, watching a video. I've been sharing, I think it's Jessica Smith TV. She has these great 5-minute to 15-minute long videos that are walking inside. Most people have weather conditions that allow them to go out right now, but I do have some clients up in Canada and in the north that might not have that. So having something like this, and you just say, you know what, setting my timer for 10 minutes, going to go walk for 10 minutes. If I still want to eat it, I can come back, but I can't come back before the 10 minutes is over. You must, and I did a video on this, by the way, I said we have to become our own supervisor. So the problem is when we go to work every day, we have an infrastructure. Your boss has said, this is when you eat lunch. This is when you take a coffee break. This is when you leave for the day, right? There's very clear rules to the day. Right now, we're all at home. We're making our own rules up. And it can be very difficult to wear the worker cap, the homeschool parent cap, and the supervisor cap. But the most important one really is the supervisor. The supervisor makes sure things all flow well through the day. Kids have time on the schedule to be homeschooled. There's blocks of time to be eating. There must be a structure to your day, or you're going to spiral out of control. It will add to your anxiety, not take away from it. I hear people saying, but Heather, scheduling stresses me out. Yeah, you're stressed because you don't have a schedule. Believe it or not, whether you could be a homeschool parent, a stay-at-home mom, if your kid gets dropped off at daycare and picked up at daycare at a certain time, you've got structure. Everyone likes structure, but yet we don't want to do it intentionally, right? So that would be a couple things to think about for Sunny. One, scheduling your time, scheduling specific time to get news updates, opting out, putting in boundaries around discussing things that create anxiety and stress. Number two, impulse eating. When you walk in the kitchen, get in the habit of setting a timer, get a timer app on your phone, set it for 10 minutes, walk out, go for a walk, go do something else. If you still want it in 10 minutes, you can have it, but you give yourself the 10-minute pause. And number three is going to be make sure your day is super structured. You need that. And if you can clearly see your eating windows and you say, I'm not eating during 2 o'clock in the afternoon, my next eating window is at 3, then you stop and you go back to doing something else that's on your schedule until you get to 3 o'clock. The next question. I am one who has been able to follow along with the program in the last month. I have heard a few of your videos and found them very helpful and empowering. However, I've been struggling with even wanting to do the work. Like I want to go on autopilot and I didn't want to deviate from my way of coping since it was more comfortable than being in touch with being mindful and present. I'm slowly finding the desire to start being mindful again. The one thing I have done throughout this period that I'm proud of is that I've consistently tracked my food. In my last week, I've become a bit lazy on doing this tool and I've been lazy on doing so, and I've gained some weight too, too many cookies. But I've already put a stop to that. So I'm on my way back to recovery, but I wasn't able to do the March challenge in the Half Size Me community, which is what I want to do now. But you're starting a delayed gratification challenge, and I'm not sure I can do both at the same time. I hope to continue to see you on Facebook, and that makes me feel more connected in the program. Thanks for being there for these hard times. All right, so the response on this is do what you can do. And keep in mind, I did a video on this today where I said thank you to everybody for, doing this whole self-quarantining thing. We are essentially all grieving right now. And this is an important conversation to have. What this particular question highlights is for a few weeks, few days, you might feel really apathetic. You may not feel motivated to do the things. You're going through a grieving process. And I'm not talking about grieving for the passing away of people. Of course, we all grieve for that. But I'm talking about you're grieving for the life that you once had. The getting up, the going into work, socializing with your coworkers, going to church on the weekend, socializing with your friends there, going out with your friends to dinner, going to the gym and seeing your gym buddies. All of those things have ceased. It is a grieving process because you have lost something that is meaningful to you. And I think this is a really important conversation to have. You've got to give yourself a little bit of time to grieve, but you have to realize there is an endpoint in sight, and then we will have our new normal, right? So everyone's going to hit those apathetic points. The goal is to get through it as quickly as you can and get back to doing what is the most beneficial for you. Could your weight go up during that time? Sure. But if you can halt the weight gain, refocus yourself and move forward, and even just maintain with an increase in weight, that's much better than continuing a self-destructive pattern, which ultimately will lead to consistent weight gain over time. So a couple thoughts are: give yourself that grieving time period, really acknowledge that. I am grieving. I am feeling a loss of these things. And grieving does not have to be for human life. It can be for a way of life, okay? So when someone gets divorced, why are they so sad, right? They don't want this person in their life. They're choosing to separate. They're choosing to divorce because it's the end of a familial connection. You're not just losing that person, you're losing their extended family and their friends and all of those connections you've made. It's like a part of your life has come to an end. It's also what nostalgia is, right? As we grow from being children into adults, a lot of us have nostalgia for things that once we had when we were kids. But as adults, when we go back to it, it doesn't feel the same. It's kind of like a death of an era, right? Well, that's what we're all kind of experiencing right now. We've all been going through the grieving process, whether it's grieving for the friends we don't get to see, whether it's grieving from the activities we don't get to participate in. Allow yourself to go through that. Don't beat yourself up for it. Then say, okay, I've gone through this. Now, what can I do to move myself forward? And it really does make the most sense that within the first 3 weeks, you probably are going through that. You're probably feeling a lot of resentment and frustration. Let that go. I mean, get it out, let it go, and then move on. We're looking at probably, from everything I'm hearing, about another month of this. We're not probably going to be on the other side till sometime in May. So that being said, the reason I'm here today is how can we make that half better than the first half? What can we do to improve? Next question. Rose says, I'm currently working from home. I start off every morning with good tracking breakfast, but the snacks comes into play, and for the rest of the day, by the end of the day, I know I'm way over my points and I have stopped tracking. I feel a bit out of control. How can I get back on track? Also, I live with 4 other adults who are not watching what they're eating. All right, so Rose, we can take a few of the suggestions that we already gave. One, structure your evening time more proactively. So, and this is going to be true for a lot of you, because even if you're working from home and you've got, say, your boss is still expecting you to keep work hours, you're probably working up until about dinner time. It's the post dinner time issue that's going to be problematic, right? So maybe, Rose, you need to put in, like, say something like an hour of yoga in the evening where you got a specific series you're following. Maybe you need to put in, say, 45 minutes of reading time where you're specifically reading, but basically break off from the group. Give yourself a schedule to follow. Maybe every evening you're making some kind of a Skype or FaceTime call to some friends that you might not otherwise get to see, your family members, right? Like, really structure that evening routine to where you are seeing, I go from A to B to C. That would be number one. Number two, going back to what I said, giving yourself that food time out. I'm finding myself in the kitchen yet again. Okay, great. Set my timer, walk out, spend 10 minutes doing something else that's healthy and proactive. If in 10 minutes you still want it, you go back and have it. Make sure you're putting it on a plate. Make sure you're sitting down and eating it. What I also would do, Rose, is make it a game with yourself to look at reducing the amount of things you're eating. So if you kind of take a look back over the last week, how many snacks would you think you're having? I know right now you're not tracking everything, but let's just say that on average, you say, okay, I'm having about 7 treats a night, okay? What I'd actually encourage you to do is start to pre-track those 7 treats each day with the goal of coming in under it, okay? So I'm tracking all my stuff. I'm going to assume I'm going to have 7 treats. Maybe it's 3 bags of potato chips. Maybe it's 3 Rice Krispie treats and it's an ice cream bar. So I've got all 7 treats in my food tracker. But what I'm going to do different is I'm going to schedule my night really well, like what Heather's talking to me about. And I'm going to do my timeout. So I'm currently in my reading block. I'm reading a book. I get this wild desire to go in the kitchen and eat. I walk in there. I go, you know what? Delayed gratification. I'm going to set my timer. Set my timer for 10 minutes. Go back to read. If at the end of that 10 minutes I still want to eat it, great. I have 7 treats pre-tracked, right? Because that's what I think I've been eating on average. But my goal is to get down to 6, right? 6 is my goal. I'd like to get to 6 because that's an improvement. Then once you start to hit 6 really routinely, Rose, I want you to try to shoot for 5 and then 4. And then eventually, hopefully, you'll get down to just 1 or 2 treats a day, which is really very normal for almost anybody, okay? So just starting with what you're doing, being honest about it, pre-tracking it, and then making the goal to come in underneath of it. That would be where I would focus your attention. All right, so let me really quick go to our YouTube live and see. All right, we've got you, Chris. Okay, so we're very fortunate tonight. We have a moderator here with us. If you have any questions for me that you would like to submit, if you need help with scheduling, if you're needing help figuring out how to deal with a specific issue, please share. This is all about you, for you. I'm here to help as much as I can. I'm going to take a sip of water. All right. So any help at all. Now, I just want to let you know we do have a lot of good stuff already in existence. 1, we have the bonus episode that went out on Wednesday. 2, I have a free 8-page guide for you where I give a lot of learning resources that I use with my own kiddos at home, some online, some not. I have tons of workout resources, from walking at home to strength training at home, doing dance workouts at home, all in this PDF. I have a scheduling template for you so you can start working on that time blocking that we talked about. I have some resources for meal planning to help make that better, because I know right now meal planning is a lot different for people. They're used to saying, okay, these are the things I want to eat, going to the store and getting them and bringing them home. Right now, either due to availability, the safety with shopping, whatever the issue might be, a lot of people are having to do the reverse of that and say, okay, what do I have? And what can I maybe get in order to make a meal plan? So some resources in there. And to get that, it is halfsizeme.com freebie. Okay, so you want to make sure, let me make sure I'm correct on that. I think it's just halfsizeme.com free. Freebies tab on halfsizeme.com, but I think it's free. No, it's freebies. All right, yeah, if you go to halfsizeme.com, freebies, it's the very first. It says Survive and Thrive, a resource guide to help you stay sane, healthy, and grateful during the coronavirus pandemic. So if you have not gotten that yet, I would highly encourage you to do so. All right. All right, so Tammy Sue on YouTube has said she feels out of control with food and she's scared she will gain more weight. Thank you for any tips, or thanks for your tips. Yeah, it's okay that there's going to be those weight fluctuations, right? So again, when someone passes away, when we're going through this grieving process, there's going to be some of those times. The weight gain might occur somewhat. The goal here is to stop it and focus on leveling off. That's the goal. So if you've gained some weight, okay, our goal is to halt and stop. How are you going to handle that? One, learn how to track at your maintenance calories, okay? So Tammy Sue, I would encourage you to find your maintenance calories. If you're tracking, or if you're tracking points, switch to your maintenance points, switch to your maintenance calories. Number two, take lots of frequent walks if you can. You know, right now, even in places like Florida, we just got the notification that forget exactly the terminology they use, but basically, other than us getting exercise, food, or medication, they don't want us to go out. Like the level went up, right? So as far as the restriction goes. So what that basically means is, unless you're exercising, unless you're getting food, you're getting medication, you're not supposed to be out of your house. So exercise being allowed, if you don't have a time restriction, I would be focusing on going for short walks, maybe 1 per hour, especially if you live in a not so densely populated area and you can walk safely in your neighborhood. Then what you want to be focusing on, tracking maintenance calories, getting frequent movement in as much as you can. Number 3, structure your time. Really schedule out your time. Give yourself those eating time frames to adhere to. Number 4, make sure that you're taking your food time out. Don't allow yourself to just eat impulsively. Even if it's 10 minutes, we all need the pause. It's kind of like, I'm a huge Dave Ramsey fan. And he really was the one that taught me about delayed gratification more with money and purchases. But it's very much the same thing with food. If you think about the fact of, okay, I walk in a store and I see something I've got to have, right? Oh my gosh, this thing looks amazing. Well, if you're following Dave Ramsey's system, you should only be buying things with cash, okay? So if I didn't know that this thing was going to be here and I didn't bring the cash to purchase it, I'm forced into a delayed gratification. I see I want it, I go back home, I wait a couple hours, I get my cash and I go back if I really want it. But what that moment does is it lets me think it over. It lets me evaluate my cash. It allows me to make an educated decision, not an impulsive decision. Our relationships often with money and food very much balance each other out as far as using one in place of the other as far as metaphors go. They're very similar, right? We impulsively want to purchase. It's the same as want to impulsively eat. What we really all need is a pause button. Like if I could be there and hit pause on you, give you time to think it through, there's going to be still times you choose to eat. But there's also going to be the times where you opt out. You're like, yeah, no, I'm actually enjoying my book right now, or I'm having a great time out on this walk. I don't have to eat right now. And that's what we're looking for. So these are the things to kind of help minimize the gain if you are up a little bit on the scale. Finding meals have, this is a new question from Mary Kay. She says, finding meals have more carbs to stretch out portions, but it's causing more cravings. How to deal with this? So this is very true. A lot of our meals are starting to change at our home too. We're using a lot more beans. I'm planning to use a little bit more rice and things of that nature to bulk up some of our meals. So what we want to keep in mind is calories are the most important, okay? The one really good thing, guys, is that for the most part, vegetables are fairly easy to come by. I'm noticing the biggest issue is with meat products right now. I'm noticing eggs milk products, and obviously toilet paper. But the reason I mention all of and bread, that's right, it was bread. I was noticing at my store the other day, the limitation, it's bread, dairy, meat, eggs. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because vegetables, believe it or not, when I go to my store, vegetables are really there in great quantity. So if you're somebody who is trying to stretch your dollar or trying to stretch out the food you have or whatever, let's just say you're taking one chicken breast and you're adding it to rice to make it a more filling meal. For you, as the person with the weight loss goals or weight management goals, what I would encourage you to do is to be thinking about bulking it up with vegetables. So, and everyone again has a different situation: frozen vegetables, canned vegetables, fresh vegetables. I would say, like, if for instance I'm doing chicken and rice, I would take a bag of broccoli florets and I dump it in there. All that fiber, all that bulk is going to help you feel fuller. It's not going to maybe have the same exact response as having more chicken, but it will fill you up more. So if I was trying to make my calories work and I did chicken and rice and I realized maybe a cup of chicken and rice was 300 calories, that's probably not going to fill me up. It really won't. It's not going to keep me satisfied. But if I took an entire bag of steamed broccoli florets or cauliflower florets or a can of green beans and I chucked it in there with it, it's going to add more bulk and it's going to give me more to eat. And that's going to help. So really, in this unusual situation, you're going to probably need to use more grains and beans to make your food stretch, to feed more people, to make what meat products you have accessible to you last longer. But with the vegetables not really seeming to be in short supply, and they're readily plentiful at my grocery store, what I would encourage you to do is look at bulking it up with vegetables. I just made a huge pot of vegetable soup because I can't do my salads right now because I'm just having a harder time keeping up with getting all the fresh produce. So I took canned green beans, frozen corn, one potato, cans of diced tomatoes. Like, a lot of it's coming, and I did have some fresh zucchini and onions and stuff like that, but really it's kind of a culmination of frozen vegetables, canned vegetables, and some of the fresh ones I could get. But honestly, a huge bowl of that soup's only 170 calories. So if you can't eat fresh vegetables right now, you most definitely could be making some vegetable-based soups out of things you have in your freezer and your pantry. So those would be some suggestions, because to your point, the cravings are coming because you're not probably feeling full if you're trying to adhere to your calories, because the carbohydrates are a much smaller quantity for the calorie price point. All right, let's go here. You are very welcome, Tammy Sue. All right, I do not see any other new questions. I'll give it one more minute just to see if there's any more questions that want to be submitted. Our big focus today is how can I help? You're struggling with balancing educating your kids, working at home, maybe your spouse is at home and he or she was not before. Maybe everybody's home all day together and you guys are trying not to kill one another. Maybe you're struggling with the whole food situation. Maybe you're struggling with your mindset around this. Anything that you could use some help with, I'm trying to help today, because again, from the looks of things, we're probably going to be doing this self-quarantining through May. And I want to make sure that you guys are set up for success going into the latter part here of this process. All right, I'll give you another minute to submit questions. You are very welcome, Dee Dee. Thank you so much. All right. All right, we're doing a last call on questions. Any questions from anybody that could use some help? All right, Sonia says, hi, Heather, sugar cravings, how to handle them. Okay, so sugar cravings are normally going to be coming from a couple possible directions. One is your nutritional way of eating, how you're eating. And then the other one is there is an emotional trigger happening and you're looking for something to make you feel better, okay? So we look to foods. So no matter what your situation is, if your goal is you want to lose weight and you're 400 pounds or 300 pounds or whatever, and you logically understand you need to eat less in order to lose weight, and you understand all the positive that's going to come from it, when you're put in an emotionally struggling position like we all are right now, you're still going to do self-destructive behaviors because the thing that you are choosing to do seemingly makes you feel better in the moment. It's a very innate desire in us to feel better, right? Why do people drink? Why do they take drugs? Why do they do certain things? Because even though logically they know what they're doing is extremely destructive, they want to feel better in the moment. And the desire to feel better in the moment outweighs the long-term consequence. So what you have to remember is if your eating is spot on, meaning that you're eating a certain amount of calories a day, you're getting in tons of fiber, good amounts of protein. By the way, just to let you know, if you are struggling with protein, if you get yourself, you can order this off Amazon. If you order yourself some protein powder, it's a great way right now when meat is not as maybe available to supplement to help you out with that. But if you're eating enough protein and you're eating enough fiber and you're eating enough calories, then what's probably happening is you're self-sabotaging with sugar cravings because you're feeling things that make you really uncomfortable. And even though you know it's self-destructive to what your future goals are, you're still giving in because it fixes the problem in the moment. It feels like it fixes the problem in the moment, but it doesn't, right? So the short answer for someone who has sugar cravings, it's no different than somebody who's grazing all day long. It's no different than someone who's struggling with the nighttime eating. All those same principles would apply. You just might prefer, like me, I'm like you in this regard. I prefer sweet stuff. If I'm going to self-soothe with food, it's going to be brownies. It's going to be cookies. It's going to be ice cream. I have other clients who it's salty and it's savory and it's wine and it's not sugary stuff. So everyone uses food differently to kind of fix seemingly the problem that they're facing. Okay. For people who say they have sugar cravings, what that translates into is their food of preference in that situation are sweet foods. But if you're somebody who likes aged cheese and you can down an entire block of aged cheese and that makes you feel better, then it's no different than somebody who's struggling with sugar craving. If you're somebody who would eat an entire bag of pretzels versus having some cake and brownies, you're still struggling with the same thing, even though seemingly your food is more salty, right? So really the food doesn't matter. What matters is, one, is your nutrition in check. Are you eating about every 3 to 4 hours? Are you eating protein and fiber at every meal? Are you sitting down? Is your meal substantial enough to leave you feeling full? Are you getting in enough healthy fats? If the answer to all of those is yes, 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 and then what you are doing is probably dealing with whatever stress and anxiety you have, trying to use food to make you feel better, because in the very brief moment that you consume it, it might. But then 5 minutes later, it doesn't, right? And this is where we get into that consistent eating cycle that several people have already mentioned. They eat something, and in that split second, they do feel better. They feel a sense of relief. They feel this, chocolate cascading down my throat. Life feels good again. And then come 2-3 minutes later, it's gone. then you need to again. I very much remember this, by the way. I remember no sooner did I eat it, but it was gone. And there was a constant sense of sadness that I struggled with why does it have to be so short? Why does the time period that I'm eating the tray of brownies or the ice cream, why is it such a short period of time? It brings me such feelings of happiness and relief, yet the time that it takes me to consume it and it go down my throat and I can't taste it anymore is so brief. So I get your struggle. I mean, I want you to know that. I totally get your struggle. But what I had to learn was I was giving in the moment to my sugar cravings to bring me a relief from discomfort that food was never going to fix. It's like if I look at my printer and I say, printer, I want you to go change the tires on my car. My printer cannot do that. My mechanic can, my printer cannot, right? If I say to my laptop, I want you to go out and mow the yard, laptop is not going to go out and mow the yard, right? We ask certain things to do jobs that they were never intended to do. And food for us, for a lot of us that struggle with weight, food has been the thing we have universally turned to in times of anxiety, in times of stress, in times of emotional upset to make us feel better. And it could have been a learned behavior from your family, right? Your grandmother could have always made you cookies when you had a bad day, or your mom took you out to get pizza every time you did something really good. Food might have always been connected to these extreme feelings. And so what we kind of have to realize is that, you know, yes, we might continue that behavior, but it's really not serving you, okay? It's seemingly making you feel better in the moment, but 2-3 minutes later, you're not. So you're back in the kitchen again, and you're back in the kitchen again. And unless you could be hooked up to a machine just shooting food into your mouth and there was no worry about consequences with weight or health, you're pretty much going to have to, at some point, right, start to deal with these emotional feelings in a different way, whether it's journaling, whether it's walking, whether it's getting therapy and counseling. Like, we all have to learn. And I went through therapy. I mean, I think this is an important thing to talk about. And after the situation's over, a lot of us might need to go into therapy to deal with some of these feelings that we had from this situation. So there's other ways to cope without using food. They feel harder to us because we're not accustomed to them. And we don't have the pause to allow us to choose something else. Before we know it, we're eating, wanting to feel better, and probably feeling better in that instantaneous moment, only to be feeling empty again as soon as the food leaves our mouth. So what I would encourage you to think about doing is journaling, definitely doing the timeout, okay? Make sure your food is balanced, protein, fiber, sitting down, eating every 3 to 4 hours at a table. Make sure you're eating enough to feel satisfied. All of those factors, because yes, those sugar cravings are not going to go away as long as all of these things are happening. All right. Next question comes from Mary Kay. I'm struggling with getting our house back into a healthy sleep routine. Teens and hubby up half the night, leading to tired eating. Yeah, that's really important. So sleep, going back to our scheduling issue, what you can do, you can't control them, but you can control yourself. And so what I would encourage you to do, depending on the ages of your kids, we have pretty regimented bedtimes for everybody, including ourselves. And we've talked about the importance of sleep. And what I think what's really important for kids to know right now, this is not just a prolonged spring break. Most kids, this is going to be till the beginning of the next school year. And the reason that this is an important conversation to have with them, depending on what state you live in, what your county is saying, is that we're talking about their health over the course of pretty much 6 months, right? So if your kid equates a regimented sleep time to going to school, but they don't have to adhere to it on the weekends, what you may as a family need to do is you may need to adhere to our school schedule, even now that we're quarantined at home, which means maybe only on weekends we stay up late and we go to bed early the rest of the time. And if your family is not on board with that, then what you would need to do is just decide to do that for yourself and model that behavior, because the truth is, your health and your eating behaviors are going to be affected by it, which is going to harm you. So just because they choose to do it doesn't mean that that's okay for you. And honestly, with kids, depending again on the age, a lot of privileges can be taken away if they don't adhere. I mean, you can always cut off cell phone services. You can give them limited time on things that are more socially based on the computer. As a parent, you have a lot of control to sway those decisions one way or the other. But I think if you come to them with a legit concern and you explain to them how you want to see everybody being healthy. And honestly, what's interesting, I just was listening to something about one of the big factors to help. Actually, you know what? One of my coaching clients who's a nurse was actually sharing with me that one of the big factors that helps people through a situation like what we're going through is sleep. Because the better rested you are, the more you are prepared to fight off an infectious disease of any kind. So really thinking about sleep as a family unit, not just because, you know, obviously we're going to be in this for a while, but two, as a way to be preventative with spreading it. But yeah, I would encourage you to create a realistic cutoff time, and it might be somewhere in between. Like during a regular school year, if your kids have to be up by 7 o'clock, maybe they can sleep until like 8 or 9 or whatever. So maybe instead of them being in bed by hypothetically 10 o'clock, maybe you cut the difference and you say, hey, how about we all make sure we're in bed by 11:30? And that way, maybe it's later than their usual, but maybe it's not so late and it has no boundaries to it. So that would be a suggestion I would make. Tina says, my challenge is being in a house with 4 kids and different diet restrictions and preferences. I get so tired of making meal plans and cooking for them that I cave and end up eating foods that I shouldn't. I'm not supposed to be eating animal proteins. Okay. Okay. So in this case, Tina, I don't know what ages your kids are. I currently have a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 13-year-old. And I've kind of taught them how to cook and prepare some of their foods. So what might be great for those parents who are home, depending on the kids' ages again, would be to teach them some basic home economics type stuff, like how to cook their own lunches, how to prepare things for breakfasts and dinners, so you aren't being stuck doing it. Like in a perfect ideal world, Tina, if they're old enough, they could maybe be producing their own lunches and you could be focusing on preparing your lunch, or maybe even your lunch and your spouse's lunch if they're home with you. If they're super young, and when I think of super young, I'm thinking of like maybe 6 and under, maybe you're not super comfortable, you could maybe talk about making lunches in bulk. So for example, if your kids, like my kids love pasta salad, I make pasta salad with beans in it and vegetables with some Italian salad dressing. We can make that a couple times a week, refrigerate it, and then just divvy it out. But you can do that with a lot of things. You can make tuna salad, you can make chicken salad. I know you're trying to avoid eating animal proteins, but from the sounds of it, they are consuming them. So I would say like making some of these ahead of time to where you're just putting it on rolls or salads or whatever for them, to where you're not having to stop every day and kind of be a chef, you know, in the moment. The other thing you could look at, if you have a crock pot or, you know, some kind of a way that you can cook it, you know, like that long-term cooking, do some soups and stews or chilies. And that way you're not, again, having to cook everything at once. So if you could teach them some simple things like how to prepare a ham and cheese sandwich, peanut butter and jelly if they're allowed to eat that, potentially making their own stuff ahead of time, like egg salad, chicken salad, tuna salad, they could become pretty self-sufficient. And then you could just focus on preparing your own lunch. That would be what I would. And if they're not at an age where you feel comfortable doing that, maybe they're younger than 6, you still can make these things up ahead of time. So if you have someone home on the weekends, or if your spouse is home in the evenings, you could prepare a bunch of that stuff in the evening or in the morning, and then have it prepared and ready to go for lunch. All right. I have an extra family member popping in every afternoon with wine snacks and find it crazy. I may have several snacks and a couple of glasses of wine before I think about it. Help. Okay, so Chris, you have a family member stopping in. So what we sound like we need to do is put some boundaries in. And what I would tell them is how much you absolutely love their popping in and visiting you, because I'm assuming this is somebody who you're not concerned about getting anything from. We're not popping in and seeing anybody because of what's going on. So I don't know exactly what that relationship looks like. And if you want to continue to let them pop in and see you, I would just let them know you really appreciate them stopping in to visit you. But what you're going to ask them to do is to, please either not bring the wine and the cheese, or give them something specific. So like, for instance, if what would be helpful for you is for them to bring over maybe a fruit tray, or some vegetables or something like that, or that they're coming, you say, hey, I'll tell you what, you continue to come, but do me a huge favor. Please do not bring the wine and cheese. It's really too tempting. I'm going to make sure I have some snacks available for when you come, because I love seeing you. And you take on the responsibility of providing the food. So obviously this person wants to come with you, see you. They want to drink with you, whatever. You could also get the individual bottles of alcohol, which a lot of my clients have found to be very helpful, where it's literally one serving of wine or one serving of alcohol. And that way, when they come over, you each get your own little bottle. You guys could have some fruits and veggies or whatever. And then you still can get the connection, the social connection, if that's something you want to continue, but with more control over it. And that's another option. You could say, hey, I noticed you're bringing over these great bottles of wine. My struggle is I can't handle all of that. So would you be willing to purchase the individual bottles of wine? You can ask them for their help. And most people, if you ask, will try. If this is somebody who's like, no, I'm going to do what I want to do, that's fine. But then what you do is you might purchase yourself the individual bottles. So when they bring theirs, it's kind of like that belongs to them, and this is what I'm going to drink from, right? So it's just really about setting up boundaries. Either A, please don't bring anything. B, could you please bring this? C, please continue to come, but I'm going to provide the snacks and the alcohol, and you do it in a way that's much more manageable for you. Or D, if you're really uncomfortable with the whole thing, hey, we're in quarantine right now. I totally want to see you. Could we possibly do Skype or FaceTime or have a Zoom meeting where you and I socialize every day that way, and you can drink your wine on your side and I can eat my snacks and stuff on my side. And that way we're not actually physically close to each other. And that would be a win, because then they could drink and do whatever they want. You could do whatever you want. And physically, you guys are not in the same physical space. All right. Those were all the questions I see there. Let me go back over here. Yes, Miss Susan. All right, good deal. I think I got all the questions answered. I am so happy you guys showed up today. I hope this was helpful for you. Really, what most of the struggle that we're facing right now comes down to is a lack of structure, not having somebody there to kind of give us those parameters, creating our own food rules during this time that are different than when we are never home, right? And balancing the responsibilities of now having extra family members home that might not have been during meal times, putting in boundaries with them and putting in different structures that support us during this time. And honestly, from a weight loss, weight management perspective, the situation is pretty golden, because you're not going into work. There's no impromptu birthday parties. There's no cookie trays. There's no donut trays. There's none of that. Most grocery stores, most people are abstaining from going as much as they can. So unless you purchase it and bring it in, which I've shared many, many times, don't buy things in large quantities that you struggle with. Okay. And the other issue is taking the time to time out. When you're in a situation that you're wanting to eat impulsively, make sure you give yourself a 5 to even 15-minute timeout, depending on what you can handle to start with. So tips for sleeping. I just released a article. I have a coaching client who deals with sleep apnea, and she works at a sleep center. And I actually shared that yesterday. So if you guys look back through my feed, you'll see something that says, are you having trouble sleeping? Please check out this resource. She pretty much nailed it as far as what to do. You'll want to limit your caffeine prior to going to bed. You'll want to set a concrete bedtime, a concrete wake up time. Try to limit the amount of news and information you're taking in because that's making people really stressed. Try to get in physical activity, eat well, drink lots of water, take really good care of yourself. But that article goes more into depth. So I would encourage you to check that out. All right. I think that's everything. I don't see anything else. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and take a break for lunch, take a break for dinner. Make sure that your day is well scheduled. And I might be back on sometime next week just to check in on you guys. You take care, and I will talk to you soon.